Get away from Spanish? All right.
Is it in Spanish?
Buenos dias.
You're all spoke. All right, Edie has asked me would I say a few words, so here they are. Columbus, synecdoche, the words have to be connected and coherent. Oh, she just said, hey, say a few words. Okay. Anyway, I first met Stu in 1957 and from High School of Science, mere 54 years ago, where we were introduced by a mutual friend, Ralph Lapellis. Our first shared interest was lighting off primitive rockets, which we made by pouring a zinc dust and powdered sulfur mixture into a metal tube, sealed at one end by a wooden nose cone. Unfortunately, the other end, at which we had a plaster of Paris nozzle, wasn't sealed at all. So the powder mixture would leak out on the way to transporting our rocket to the wooden launch stand. Since the burn rate of such a mixture depends, among other things, on its density, what we ended up with was something much closer to a bomb than a rocket. And we were fortunate to escape with our lives. True? Okay. In those days, Stu worked in a drugstore part-time, and he would often describe to me how, when he wasn't doing deliveries, he was assigned to scraping dog poop out of these serrated rubber floor mats. Many years later, we both wondered if this wasn't some uncanny harbinger of his tasks as an APC executive. As it turned out, Stu and I ended up not only at the same college, Cooper Union, in the same fraternity, Sigma Kappa Tau, but at the same first job with Wheeler Labs. In college, somehow the memory that's remained with me the longest is Stu swimming 4 lengths of a pool in partial requirement for a freshman physical education class. You've heard the expression, sink or swim. Prior to that event, I'd always assumed those activities were mutually exclusive. But in Stu's case, it was sink and swim. Each lap, he became progressively lower in the water, more submerged, until by lap 4, I was on the verge of jumping in to save him from A, drowning, and or the wrath of Professor Hollinger, who looked on with a mix of horror and nausea. Over the years, it has become apparent to everyone who knows him that Stu is a polymath, a true Renaissance man, and I'm not referring to the way he dresses, with vast fonts of information and expertise on an astounding variety of subjects. African dictators in the 1970s, Stu's your man. Bach's performance on his third grade hearing test, ask Stu. Protein folding in prions, fiscal and monetary theory, World War II naval battles, ask Stu. In fact, Stu is now recognized as one of the big 3 sources of all mankind's knowledge. And for instance, rather than say, I Googled something or I Wikied something, many of Stu's acquaintances now use the term, I Stuied that, and now I know all about it.
Oh, I know.
All the above notwithstanding, the real subject of these comments is friendship. And here are some fantasy gedankens, these are thought experiments, that I used to rank my friends. This is a little bit idiosyncratic, so I ask you to bear with me. Many people have laughed at me for this and mocked me and berated me, but I'm going to...
We'll continue.
We'll continue in that mode. Okay, so we're going to start with the third tier. Okay, this doesn't require the people you call friends, but who are really acquaintances, people you see occasionally, have a good time with, but of whom you expect no particular unusual consideration. Next, you have the second tier, and here's my defining gedanken for that. I just committed some kind of a horrible crime, and I'm being hunted down by the police. And on a freezing, rain-soaked evening, desperate and shivering, I knock at my friend's door. I just killed, and you can fill in the blank, and the cops are after me, and I need a place to stay for a couple of nights. I go on to point out how dangerous this could be for my friend, aiding and abetting, obstruction of justice, blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, he invites me into his house. And later, when the cops knock and question him, he denies any knowledge of my presence. Second tier friend. Finally, the first tier gedanken. It's World War I. And 50 yards away from my foxhole, I'm lying wounded. Vicious machine gun fire rakes the ground all around me. Now, if it's you in the foxhole, and it's your son, your daughter, your wife, your brother out there, There's no question. You crawl out and you try to drag them back in, right? Right? Okay. There's no thought process involved, no examination of consequences, no pause to consider your own danger. You just do it. It's a reflex. And if it's a tier 1 friend, that's what he does for you. A tier 1 friend considers you like family. Stu is a tier 1 friend. In large ways and small, he's like the brother I never had, the brother from another mother. When I called Stu from California and said, I think I'm coming back to New York, he said, oh, that's great, that's really great. So what's your plan? And I said, what do you mean? I told you I'm coming back to New York. And Stu said, but you need a plan. Don't you understand? You need a plan. And so he lined up 3 job interviews for me. When I finally did come back, he gave me his daughter's old car. That's what friends do. When I need someone to laugh at a really stupid joke or an awful pun, I know who to call. When my own wife or children scowl and shake their heads, I defend myself by asserting, well, Stuie would laugh. When I need some advice, another viewpoint on some problem, personal business, whatever it is, financial, Stu is the one I call. So a tier 1 friend, there's not a lot of them, and I feel myself singularly fortunate to have Stu as one of mine for all these years. Stu, I'm not going to tell you that at age 70, it's a wonderful start of a new phase of life. But per one of your quotes you sent me, the good thing about old age is it doesn't last very long. But I hope yours does, and just know that this friend continues to delight in your presence.
The worst job in the world is